Hey, welcome back, everybody. Thank you so much for joining me as we do complete the first round of the my least favorite WWF LJN tournament. So, as I've been going along through these videos, trying to look at each of the figures and kind of trying to plan ahead. And so far, there's been a couple of figures, at least two, if not more, that I felt like we're probably gonna win this tournament. But it's always based on the luck of the draw and who their competitor is. And for whatever reason, why I might like another figure over a particular other figure, right? And I still can't believe that Ron Simmons in the last video actually pushed forward. I mean, how bad of a figure do you got to be to... Oh, nope. I don't want to say too much because you guys... sometimes you folks might watch these out of order, and I don't want to, spoiler for a lot of your viewing. So today we are going to complete the last 4 matchups, and we're going to look at all, and that's going to complete the 32 figures that are part of this tournament. And so there'll be 16 losers going into round 2. So at 4 matchups per, we're probably only looking at 2 videos in round 2. Round 3 we'll have 1 video. Round 4 we'll have 1 video, the semifinals. And round 5, I just might break up the semifinals and finals into its own individual video. And if I've, based on how I've been posting these videos, if I'm going according to plan, meaning that I'm not posting 1 video every week, if I'm posting 2 or 3 videos a week, I should have these tournament videos done in about 2 or 3 weeks. So otherwise, it's probably going to be a couple months before I complete this particular tournament. It all depends on what kind of acquisitions have come in and what kind of special videos I'll be making. So, alright, so the last 8 names are in this hat, and they include Mil Mascaris. And he is going to do battle against Ric Flair from Wrestling Writer. Next one up, Ted Arcidi. And he will square off against Papa Shango from the Raider Nation. Next one up is the Iron Sheik. And he will square off against Davey Boy. Last matchup is going to feature Dingo Warrior as he does battle against Rick Rude. Alright, so I will go ahead and pull those figures, and I will be back in a split second. Alright, everybody. Figures have been pulled, and we are ready to begin. So, first matchup was going to feature Mil Mascaris as he squares off against Ric Flair. So, even though Ram Treasures is a company I covet very much, and I'll give shout outs to them whenever, the figures that they come out with are actually decent, but this tournament is very Ram Treasures heavy, which tells me that Ram Treasures, more times than not, hit the mark when it comes to their action figures. Mil Mascaris, to me, was a no-brainer to be a part of this tournament. Not really familiar with this character. I had to go back and actually watch some videos and learn about him a little bit. And I think I did a little bit more research when I was doing the my favorite AWA Rumco tournament, because I did have a custom Rumco figure of Mil Mascaris, so I learned a lot more from him during that tournament. Not a whole lot of information during this go around. I'm thinking the first round will probably be kind of talking about what I like and dislike about the figures. Second round, I might start giving a little bit more story time, possibly. That way I'm not saying the same thing over and over again. When I looked at Mil Mascaris, I'm like, you're charging $150 for an Iron Sheik figure. 100% Iron Sheik. All they did was shave off the little elf toes. Same exact body and muscles, shoulder here, fighting pose, identical. You can buy an Iron Sheik LJN on eBay for like $3. And I'm sure anybody could go out and just paint think about this. Iron Sheik is just a bald figure with the mustache. That has got to be the easiest figure possible to customize. So, again, this is one of the last figures I got in. I think this was part of the... I want to say this was part of the bundle of 7 figures at one point that I had purchased several months ago. So, again, this is another one of those characters who came up and I probably waited a year or so before I finally bought them. I just was not interested in it. I just could not fathom paying that type of money. Now, eventually, like I said, these videos are for the viewers. And without the viewership, I wouldn't be persuaded to go out and acquire certain figures or certain lines. I think I would have lived without this one with ease and with great gratitude. But, me wanting to have the complete collection, combine that with the need to, provide everything from other viewers, I went ahead and I, bit the bullet and bought this guy. Not worth it in my opinion. Like I said, just an Iron Sheik figure. And if the name recognition was there, maybe I would have felt differently. If this was actually a good playable fighting pose, there are plenty of people who use Iron Sheik, and they absolutely love it. Even as adults, there's still guys that I watch online who have wrestling videos, and they use Iron Sheik all the time. But to me, it is not an enjoyable figure. If I look at this figure, he's like a small punch down. I mean, look at it. You can't do anything. Maybe like an overhead toss over or something. Drop an elbow. Almost any figure you look at could drop an elbow. So I kind of said a long time ago that I really didn't want to use the elbow drop as a fighting attribute because it's ridiculous and redundant. So, Mil Mascaris, just one more Ram Treasures figure to put on this list. And I think Ram Treasures by far has the most low quality figures of the whole LJN line. And think about how many thousands and thousands of customizers there are in the world. And 32 figures, and Ram Treasures makes up like what? 10 of them? Or so? More? I haven't been counting, but it's a good chunk. This one kind of hurts to put this figure up here. So, my buddy Eric, he really is the first customizer I got in contact with who became more than just a seller for me. He became a good friend, and to a point where I was constantly buying figures online and sending them to him so that he could customize figures for me. Or if he customized a new figure, he wouldn't even post it. He would contact me, "Hey, I just made a new figure. Do you want it?" And if you looked at my custom LJN wall, probably the first 4 or 5 shelves are all wrestlingwriter custom figures. Some of them he bought from others; they're part of his personal collection. Some of them he made himself. So at a time, I think Ric Flair was on that list. I think Abdullah Butcher was on that list, and I don't remember who the third one was. I want to say Dusty Rhodes, but I don't think so. I'm trying to think. But I remember when I was so in 2022, January, I was with Acoma Technical Solutions, and I was in Iraq. And Eric reached out to me, and he's like, "I got these 3 figures. You want them?" And for a while, I passed on them. Like 4 days had passed, a week. Like usually, I jump on his figures immediately, but these I just couldn't fathom doing that. Like when I looked at the Abdullah Butcher, all I saw was King Kong Bundy. And go figure that nowadays I look at the Abdullah Butcher figure, and it's like my 6th favorite wrestling writer figure. But when I look at this figure, I really didn't want it, to be honest. I thought the head sculpt looked extremely weird. It was put on a Tito Santana body, which you guys already know I despise. Terrible fighting pose, super skinny. But, there were certain things about this figure that offset it. I like the different blue and white. You don't see Ric Flair in those colors very often, which was nice. And this is important. It goes to show when you got a good relationship with people, you're willing to spend more. And I'm going to mention that when we look at the last matchup. So I eventually, yeah, I decided to pull the trigger on the 3 figures, you know, Ric Flair being one of them. It was never one of my favorite figures, even from, you know, Wrestling Writer, but because he was a friend, because it was somebody that I bought from a lot, and I wanted to kind of have, like, the Wrestling Writer collection going strong, right? So I decided to pull the trigger on him. And now here this figure is in a list of 32 figures of my least favorite that I own. Not too many LJN original figures in this tournament, oddly enough. So a majority of them are customs. And it was an oddity. Mil Mascaris is a bad figure. At the end of the day, do I like an Iron Sheik body pose or do I like a Tito Santana? I think playability-wise, Tito Santana maybe has the leg up because there's not too much you can actually do with an Iron Sheik. Aesthetically, I think the Iron Sheik has the leg, the Mil Mascaris figure has the leg up over the Ric Flair, and because it's not, I don't know who does this. If this is Zashman or Tom Begg or something like that, who has this head mold, it's Ric Flair-ish. You know, it's not horrible. It just looks odd. But you know, Eric, he does a fantastic job. Like when you look at this figure on the edges of the neckline, you can't tell that a head was ever removed. And it's why Eric was one of my favorite customizers for the longest time. But yeah, I mean, when he made this, he did solid work. He just the Tito Santana pose is what does it for me at the end of the day. So I didn't think this would happen, but I actually really like the Mil Mascaris in comparison. So Mil Mascaris will not be moving on to round 2, and Ric Flair continues on with my least favorite tournament. Alright. So, Ted Arcidi versus Papa Shango. We're actually going to start with Papa Shango. Here's the thing. In this video, we saw Ric Flair, and we're going to see another figure from Wrestling Writer. How can my favorite customizer have 2 bad figures that are in this tournament? Well, one of them has to do with the fact that I needed 32 guys, and I just kind of dislike them for certain reasons. But the Raider Nation is like on my top 5 list with greatest customizers, or at least greatest seller of custom figures. Again, Justin isn't the customizer. His friend Kenny Lester, I've talked about him a million times. He's the artist, and you always gotta look at the feet because you always get that Kenny Lester KO initials on the bottom. So when I got this Papa Shango, I'm trying to think if there was someone before this or not. So 2022, 2023, I was still buying a lot of the figures from the Raider Nation, and every so often I reach out to Justin and be like, hey, do you have any new LJN customs coming out? After about a year or so, they finally released some new figures, and lately, the last few months, they've been releasing a ton of customs, and I kept purchasing a lot of them, but like they came out with like Demolition and Powers of Pain. You know, I got so many customs. I didn't want to spend the money on them, and plus I feel like the customs I had were better than what was being shown. So I think Papa Shango was like the first figure that they came out with. I can't see on the back of the shelf over there, but I felt like when they reached out to me, said, hey, we finally got a new listing up, I felt forced to an extent, because I've been contacting them like a million times over the last year to ask about the figures, and if I didn't purchase this, then I felt like I'd be wasting their time. And so that's one thing, one reason that kind of tied my hand. A second thing is, I like the figure. I mean, it's not perfect, but it's not a bad figure by any stretch. It is an SD Jones figure, essentially. Now, somehow they shaved down the body to make it look super thin. Everything is painted on, but, the paint, the designs look pretty sharp. You know, especially when you get into the tattoo designs, right? So there could have been a whole lot worse out there. Uh, the colors, the tattoos, coupled with the SD Jones pose, made it a solid inclusion to my roster or to my custom collection. So, am I angry I bought it? No. I just purchased, in my opinion, a little bit better version of Papa Shango before I bought this one, so I really didn't need another custom. But I kind of felt like if I didn't, I'd be kind of like a jerk for not buying it. And there's been a lot of a lot of figures that come out lately that I wanted for specific reasons, you know, because they were like managers or manager types, representatives. But the figures just haven't been getting as good as like the first set I've been buying from them. And with Shinjo and Hakushi in this tournament, and now Papa Shango, Raider Nation has 3, I think, important figures on this list, which is disappointing. But another thing I didn't like, I love the fact that it came with an accessory, but the hat was just so crazy. I mean, that's like an Abraham Lincoln hat. If this hat was like shaved down to about that high, this would have been a fantastic addition. Plus, later on, he sent me like some kind of stick. I don't know what kind of a stick it is, walking stick or something that you can include with the figure. But it's just basically something you lean up against the hand because it doesn't exactly fit or anything. With that being said, Ted Arcidi. When I looked at figures like Ted Arcidi and Bam Bam Bigelow, they both pretty much have the same pose. I was actually thinking I was going to get Bam Bam Bigelow in this tournament as well, but just didn't have enough slots open, so I went with Ted Arcidi instead. This is a pretty solid looking figure. You know, not anything horrendous, right? And I thought, based on the pose, that this actually would have been a very fun and playable figure. I felt the same way about the Don Morocco figure, you know, before I acquired spare to use. And with the positioning of the hands, like the Don Morocco, and with Ted Arcidi, he's very reminiscent to that of Arn Anderson Galoob. The hands kind of like facing down, right? And if the hands were up, it would have been fine. Arn Anderson for the Galoob actually works those figures. Ted Arcidi, LJN, not so much. The hands are just way too far down. And like I said, man, I'm always a play pose first guy. And you got to basically jump up to throw punches. It makes it bad. It just makes it not so fun. You know, it looks really good. Looks really sharp. Good, strong muscle man. I don't know. Color-wise, Papa Shango all day. Accessories, of course, Papa Shango. Play pose, Papa Shango a million. Papa Shango, no doubt about it. Easy, easy, easy choice. And I don't know who Ted Arcidi is. I didn't grow up watching Ted Arcidi. I absolutely love the Papa Shango gimmick. This smoke train and Sir Charles and Goodfather and Godfather and Kama and no, forget all that. No, I loved Papa Shango. Papa Shango was awesome. This figure is good. It's not perfect, but it does the trick. So Ted Arcidi is moving on to round 2. Next matchup is going to feature Iron Sheik as he does battle against Davey Boy. And I kind of said the same thing with... I'm going to say the same thing with Davey Boy that I said with Dynamite Kid. Overall, it's a decent figure. I don't hate the figure. I just don't love it. I think it's average and more than likely below average figure. The one arm up pose is horrendous. I hate that. Again, he's just a jump to the turnbuckle flying clothesline guy. With the right figure, yeah, he does give you a nice one-arm body slam, so that is good. Right arm, you really can't do anything with this figure. With Dynamite Kid, it's the left arm that you really can't do anything with. They're just mirrors of each other. But it's still a serviceable figure nonetheless. It's playable. You can make use out of it. And that's why I don't hate on this one as much as like a Ricky Steamboat or Tito Santana or Harley Race, for example, Jimmy Snuka, those type of figures. You know what? I think Iron Sheik. That is so cool. Not exactly 100%, but I just noticed it right now, kind of looking at the circles. So, I mean, obviously Iron Sheik has a little dots or whatever in the middle, but very closely reminiscent to one another. So, Davey Boy Smith, name recognition all day, right? One of my all-time favorite wrestlers. There's really no reason why I shouldn't put him in my top 5, but I think I have him at like number 7 among my favorite wrestlers all time. Iron Sheik. I think I actually know Iron Sheik better as like Colonel Mustafa in the 90s because of the whole Desert Storm War and everything, and the whole Sergeant Slaughter turncoat storyline, and but he was never the Iron Sheik that he was of the 80s. The 1980s, you had your 3 main bad guys. Alright, you had King Kong Bundy, most definitely. Iron Sheik was a most definite one. Now, some guys might argue Roddy Piper, possibly, but I think Nikolai Volkov maybe was probably your big 3. That makes up the 1980s. But, I am not in love with either figure. I think neither one are like really super enjoyable. I get a lot more use out of the British Bulldogs than I would from Iron Sheik. I mean, there are a lot of things I love about the Iron Sheik figure. Waist down, I love the design of the pants and everything, right? The elf shoes are fantastic, dual colored. I absolutely love that. I mean, the head is very simple. That's why this figure gets customized like crazy. And I bought some customs, like I think what did I get recently from Harvey's Nuts? I got the, Steve Austin figure. I think there's multiple figures, but Steve Austin is the one that jumps my mind, where they used Iron Sheik to create Steve Austin, right? People, they take Nikolai Volkov and they shave down the back to make it more flat, or like the Papa Shango figure, that you take an SD Jones and you shave down the body so that it makes it look a lot thinner. I don't know why people can't shave down the muscles to make it look different so that it's not a genuine Iron Sheik. You can guess, but, it could have been like a new molded figure or something, right? I don't know. Holding this figure, I kind of like this figure a lot more than I give it credit for. At the end of the day, I think the thing that gets me the most is the play pose. I mean, he is a DDT guy. He's an elbow guy. Maybe he's like a one-arm toss-over guy. Maybe get the guy in like a choke slam or sleeper hold or something. I mean, you can use him for certain things. I mean, I don't know. Shoot. Trying to look at the different poses and stuff, different grips that the figure has. I don't know if I would still classify this as like a number 3 worst figure anymore. I think when I did my top 10 favorite a couple years ago, I think he was in the top 5, top 6. I don't remember where exactly. But it's irrelevant because Davey Boy is definitely a much better figure than the Iron Sheik. And to be honest, I think it's unfair that the British Bulldogs were even on this list. But who else could I really put on there? I mean, Ken Patera? I don't like the whole arms up like that, but Ken Patera, he's got a nice look to him, and it's a nice, hefty figure, so that's possibility. Elizabeth, maybe, but again, Elizabeth, like I said in the first video, she's kind of like a floater. You don't really consider her part of the overall roster or anything like that. Jake Roberts, name recognition, sure, but the way that the hands are positioned, I hate that, so I don't know. I felt like the British Bulldogs were a good selection for me. I think 99% of the people out there probably really love the British Bulldogs LJN figures. But the LJN figures, I just feel like they could have done a whole lot better. So, the last matchup is going to feature Dingo Warrior versus Rick Rude. I am going to start with Dingo Warrior. So, at the first matchup, we were looking at Mil Mascaras and Ric Flair. Ric Flair and now Dingo Warrior both come from Wrestling Writer. And this is one of those figures I was talking about, that if I had the choice, if I were to go back and redo it, I would not buy this figure. I sure in the heck wouldn't buy it for the price I paid. And I saw this figure on his eBay. You know, last year, a couple years ago, he was, selling his stuff on eBay a lot. 2.5 years ago. I mean, that's how I started. That's how I found him. That's how I bought my first figure from him. And that's how I bought all the customs from him. And for the longest time, well, for a couple months. For a couple months, I was buying a lot of customs through eBay from him. And then eventually, I just PayPal'd him money. But, he had this listed on auction one time, and I saw it. I liked it. I wanted it. But I ended up losing out on it. And later on, I don't know if it was the same figure, if it was a different one. But he had another one, and I offered him, I think I offered like $50 for it. This is not a $50 figure. What did I like about the figure? Number one, Dingo Warrior, right? So we're looking at an Ultimate Warrior figure. They got the mustache right up in there, which is nice. Ultimate Warrior, face paint. Whether you call him Dingo Warrior, Ultimate Warrior, it doesn't matter. This is, it was still a lot of fun. He had this nice little Texas Championship belt from the Texas Territories. And most importantly, it's a Greg Valentine figure. Greg Valentine is my number 5 all-time favorite LJN figure. If I ever start talking about my top 10 favorite LJNs again, I think a lot of them will probably be in the same number that I had before. But there were going to be a lot of asterisks, in that video, because there should be a lot of moving pieces, and I guess one day I'll explain if that ever happens. I think reality is you're paying more for the belt than the figure, because Greg Valentine, I've been trying to sell my Greg Valentine forever, right? It finally sold a couple months ago, but I had that thing up for like a year or two. Maybe not 2 years, but I would say a year or more. And I was only selling it for like $10. I did not have an easy time selling Greg Valentine. So, Greg Valentine is not an expensive figure. The paint is done really well, but I don't think that this is something that spent, multiple days to work on. $10 figure, with time and supplies, maybe another $10. I honestly, I think if I were to bid on this, I'd probably bid like $10. I think that's the highest I would go. I mean, the belt's one of those little Velcro belts I don't like, so. This is where I talk about you are willing to spend more for sellers that you trust and respect. If, Darth Giant was selling this figure for $3 with free shipping, I probably wouldn't purchase from him, because that guy has always given me attitude, and I'm like, dude, I'm an interested buyer. Why? What's with all the contentment or whatever? But now, because I bought so much from him, and respect him, and I want to make sure that he gets paid for his work and whatnot. Yeah, I went above and beyond with my offer for this figure. It's not one I would go back and redo again. Is this figure worse than Rick Rude? I think in January. When was it? I don't think it was January 2024. Man, if I made that video in January 2023, that is insane. Because I do not feel like I made that video that long ago, where I did a top 10 list of my least favorite action figures across multiple lines. And I think I may have had Rick Rude at number 1. Possibly. As like the worst action figure ever created. A lot of things have changed, and I say it all the time. I could make this video today and have it set up a certain way. I could come back 5 minutes later and have everything completely different. I don't feel the same way. I don't think that Rick Rude is the worst action figure ever created anymore. As a statue, I like the look. You know, it's Rick Rude. You know, he's got that name recognition. Someone you grew up watching. I love the design of the color, the multicolored pants. I mean, to me, that is very vintage 1980s. That is insane. Kind of like those 1980s porno videos. I shouldn't have said that. But that's exactly what the kind of feel that you get from that stuff, man. I don't know how to explain it. That's exactly what I envision a 1980s porno look like. Yeah, YouTube, don't what is it called? Strike? Don't strike my account for saying that. But tattoos look nice. I mean, the paint looks great. It's the freaking arms. At the end of the day, that's what it all boils down to. There's not even a question. 1,000,000% I like the Greg Valentine figure better, play pose wise. But we're not looking at Greg Valentine, right? We're looking at Dingo Warrior. And play pose and name recognition tells me that Dingo Warrior is a better figure. But I kind of feel like everybody expects Rick Rude to win as being the worst figure ever made. But I'm going to ease a lot of thoughts, and I'm going to surprise the world. Because I am going to put Rick Rude down. Meaning Rick Rude will not participate in round 2 and moving forward. I don't think this figure is as bad as a lot of people give it credit for. Arms position sucks, of course. I think sellers, when they list Rick Rude, you know, mint on card for like $1,500, they're insane. Because it's vintage, 1980s, it's wrestling fan, and it's, you know, a beloved character. I could understand that figure selling for like $400 or $500 on card. And I think even that's ludicrous. But when you start getting, you know, $900, $1,200, $1,500, $2,000 for a Rick Rude, one of the worst non-playable action figures ever made, it makes absolutely no sense. And that's why I'm like super glad that, you know, the seller that, you know, sold me on my Black Card series or a ton of Black Card series was able to work with me and accept my offer. And it came out to be about $1,000 out of pocket for this, but I mean, better than $1,500 or $1,800, right? So, no, I mean, it's not bad, like I said, but all I see is Greg Valentine. I can't really see anyone else, and that's why this one is moving forward. Alright guys, with this matchup, that completes round 1. 16 matchups in, and 16 losers. Moving on to round 2. Remember, the so-called winners are actually the worst figures, so you'd actually, in this tournament, you actually want to lose the matchup. Alright, so again, completion of round 2, or round 1. I don't know how quickly I'm going to begin round 2, but theoretically I like to get them back to back as quickly as possible, so hopefully you guys are enjoying this tournament, and I want to talk to you guys later. I'm trying to look around the room, see if there's anything else coming up, but nothing in the short term, so alright guys, thank you, and talk to you soon.